The night was soft, with the hum of crickets and the smell of rain-damp earth, the kind of scent that reminded him of home, of the life he'd chosen far away from the noise of cities and the pretenses of people. The cowboy sat on the worn porch steps of his ranch house, boots muddy from the day's work, hat tipped low as the stars stretched endless above him. His name was Caleb Reed, the kind of man who spoke with his eyes more than his tongue, who'd learned long ago that silence was more truthful than charm. He'd built his world with his own hands, fences, stables, dreams, everything except the one thing that had started to ache inside him lately. The feeling that something was missing. That's when she came, or rather, when the wind carried her voice into his world one broken morning. Her name was Elara Quinn. She wasn't from these parts. You could tell by the way she looked around, as if every horizon was a question she didn't yet know how to answer. The town had seen her first at Miller's Diner, that little cafe off the highway where gossip brewed faster than coffee. A stranger with a face that didn't try to impress anyone, with hands that trembled when she reached for her cup, and eyes that seemed to apologize for existing. She'd come to work there after losing everything. Or at least that's what she'd muttered to the owner when asked if she had any references. She just needed a place to start over, she'd said, and the owner, a woman too kind for her own good, had nodded. Nobody knew what she'd been running from, but it was clear she carried more past than luggage. Caleb met her by accident, or maybe by the kind of fate that doesn't knock, just walks in and sits down like it belongs there. He'd gone into the diner one afternoon after hauling hay all morning, the kind of tired that coffee barely fixed. She was behind the counter, hair pulled into a messy knot, eyes down, voice quiet when she asked what he'd have. "Just coffee," he said, but his voice caught when she looked up. Not because she was beautiful, she wasn't. Not in the way the world defined it, but because her eyes were raw, honest, like she'd seen too much and stopped. Pretending she hadn't, she poured his coffee with shaky hands, and when she set the cup down, a bit spilled onto the counter. She winced, mumbling an apology. Caleb just smiled, the kind of smile that didn't judge. "Don't worry," he said softly. "It's just coffee. Nothing worth fretting over." That was the first time she looked at him without fear, the faintest hint of disbelief in her gaze, as if kindness was a language she'd forgotten how to understand. Days passed, and somehow the cowboy found more reasons to stop by the diner, sometimes for pie, sometimes for no reason at all. He'd sit at the same stool, tip his hat and say, "Morning, Miss Elara," like her name mattered more than the menu. She'd blush faintly every time, but still, she never met his gaze for long. One rainy afternoon, when thunder rolled across the fields, the power went out in the diner. Candles flickered on tables, and the air filled with the smell of wet dust and brewing storms. Elara stood near the window, watching the rain pour down, and for the first time, she spoke more than 2 sentences to him. "You ever think the sky cries just to remind us we're not the only ones who break sometimes?" she said, her voice fragile yet strangely strong. Caleb set his cup down and nodded. "Maybe so," he replied, "but the sky always clears up after. Maybe that's something to hold on to." She looked at him then, really looked, and something in her heart shifted quietly. Like a door she didn't know was locked. Weeks turned into months. The cowboy and the broken girl became something the town whispered about. Though neither of them cared, he'd walk her home sometimes, under the stretch of stars, through dusty roads that smelled of cedar and earth. They'd talk about everything and nothing. He told her about losing his brother years ago, about the silence that came after death. She told him about a man she once loved who made her feel small, about words that bruised deeper than fists, about standing in front of mirrors and hating the reflection because it was never enough for him. Caleb didn't interrupt. He just listened, really listened, in the way only people who understand pain can. One night, under the golden spill of a full moon, they sat by the fence line of his ranch. The wind played with her hair, and for once she wasn't trying to hide behind it. She turned to him, voice trembling like a confession she'd held too long. "I'm not pretty," she whispered, as if saying it aloud might shatter her. "I know what people see. I know what I'm not. You don't have to be." kind just because you feel sorry for me." The words hung in the air like smoke, fragile and thick with hurt. Caleb looked at her, really looked. Not like a man seeing a woman, but like a soul recognizing another. His voice was low, steady, honest. "That's fine," he said with a small, genuine smile tugging at his lips. "I ain't looking for pretty. I need honest, not fancy." For a long moment neither of them spoke. The wind whispered through the grass, and a shooting star cut across the dark sky as if the universe itself approved. Elara blinked hard, as if holding back tears she didn't know she still had. "Honest," she repeated softly, tasting the word like it was something holy. "I don't think anyone's ever wanted that from me." Caleb reached out then, slow and respectful, and brushed his thumb across her knuckles, rough hands meeting softer ones, both scarred in their own ways. "Then maybe it's about time someone did," he said. After that night, something subtle but powerful changed between them. Elara began to stand a little straighter, speak a little clearer. She'd still flinch when compliments came her way. But when Caleb told her she looked strong, she'd smile instead of denying it. She started spending weekends helping him at the ranch, learning how to ride, how to trust her balance, how to laugh again, and every now and then, when she'd catch her reflection in the water trough or the window pane, she'd pause, not to fix her hair or to frown at her flaws, but to see herself the way he saw her, as someone real, someone worth the quiet kind of love that didn't need makeup or mirrors. But even as peace found her, shadows from her past still lingered. Sometimes she'd wake at night, heart pounding from dreams of a voice yelling, of promises turned cruel. Caleb would hear her, crying softly through the thin walls of the ranch house guest room, but he never barged in. He just waited till morning, made her coffee, and left a note that said, "You're safe here." Slowly the nightmares faded. Slowly she started to believe him. Then came the day when her past tried to find her again. It was late afternoon, the sun bleeding gold across the fields. Caleb was out mending fences when a black car rolled up the dirt road to the diner. The man who stepped out wore city shoes, clean and polished, his smile too sharp to be kind. He asked for Elara. The diner went quiet, forks frozen mid-air. She turned pale, every muscle stiff. "You need to leave," she said, voice shaking but firm. The man chuckled. "You ran off without saying goodbye, sweetheart. I thought I'd come collect what's mine." Caleb happened to walk in just then, dust still on his sleeves, eyes calm but alert. He saw the way she shrank back and understood everything without a word. Standing beside her, he said in a tone as low as thunder, "She don't belong to you." "Not now, not ever," the man sneered. But one look into Caleb's steady eyes made him reconsider. He muttered something under his breath and left, tires spitting gravel as the car disappeared down the road. Elara's hand shook. She turned to Caleb, tears breaking loose, every wall she'd built crumbling. "Why do you keep helping me?" she asked. "You don't even know what I've done." Caleb placed his hat on the counter, looked her in the eyes, and said softly, "Don't need to. You're here now. That's all that matters. The rest ain't my business, unless you wanted to." That was the night she realized that love didn't always arrive with fireworks or promises. Sometimes it came quiet, with steady eyes and a heart that didn't need to fix you, just hold space for you to heal. As dawn crept over the fields the next morning, she stood outside his ranch house again, watching the world wake up. The horizon stretched wide, painted with orange and gold, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel small against it. She felt alive. Behind her, Caleb approached, a mug of coffee in one hand. "You look different today," he said. She smiled faintly. "Maybe I finally believe what you said." He raised a brow. "About what?" She turned to him, sunlight catching in her eyes. "That honesty is better than pretty." Caleb chuckled softly, handing her the cup. Told you. Pretty fades. Honest lasts, and somewhere deep inside her something finally healed. Not all at once, not like magic, but enough that when she looked at the man beside her, she didn't just see a cowboy. She saw a reminder that even the most broken hearts could find peace in the simplest truths. As the day began, the wind carried the faint echo of her laughter across the open fields, and for Caleb, That sound was worth more than beauty itself. The days after that confrontation slipped by like warm wind through wheat, soft and golden. For a while, peace felt like it might stay. Elara laughed more often, her steps lighter as she moved through the diner, through the ranch, through the open fields that once intimidated her. She'd found pieces of herself here, in the honest work, the early mornings, the quiet companionship of a man who didn't need words to understand. Caleb was patient in ways she'd never known. He taught her to saddle a horse, to ride steady, even when the ground felt uncertain beneath her. "Keep your eyes on the horizon," he'd say, voice calm as the dawn. "The horse'll feel what you feel. If you believe you're steady, it will too," she hadn't realized. Then that he was teaching her about life as much as about horses. By early autumn, the ranch looked alive again, fences repaired, fields ready for wintering. Elara had started painting again too, using an old set of brushes she'd found in a forgotten drawer. Her art was clumsy at first, but it carried truth. Sunrise skies, rough hands, quiet smiles. She painted not to impress, but to remember. Caleb would watch from a distance, never interrupting, just content to see her creating again. "You make things beautiful without trying," he said once. And she'd smiled, not because she believed it, but because he did. But peace, as always, is a fragile thing. It never announces when it's about to leave. It was a cold evening in late October when the past came back again. Not in the form of a man this time, but in a letter. Elara found it waiting on the diner counter. Her name written in a handwriting she knew too well. The world seemed to tilt as she read it. "You can't hide forever. We have unfinished business. I'm coming." Her hands went cold. She didn't tell Caleb, not at first. She didn't want to burden him, didn't want to bring her darkness into his light. But fear has a way of showing, no matter how you hide it. Caleb noticed her silence that evening, the way her laughter faltered halfway, the way her eyes darted toward shadows that weren't there. "Something wrong?" he asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. "Just tired," she lied. But Caleb had learned to read truth between words. "You sure?" She nodded, but her hands told on her, trembling as she gripped her coffee mug. He reached across the table and laid his hand gently over hers. "You don't have to carry it alone." "Elara, not anymore." Tears welled up, and the words tumbled out, the letter, the fear, the memories. Caleb listened, eyes steady, jaw tight. When she finished, he said quietly, "Then we'll face it, whatever it is, together." The next days carried an uneasy calm. Caleb reinforced the locks, made sure she wasn't alone at night, but he didn't fill the air with promises he couldn't keep. Instead, he filled it with presence, the kind of silent protection that says, "I'm here," without needing to say it. Still, Elara's nightmares returned, heavier than before. One night, she woke screaming, sweat-drenched, her heart pounding. Caleb was there in seconds, kneeling beside her bed. "It's just a dream," he said softly. "You're safe." She looked at him, tears spilling, and whispered, "What if I'm not worth saving?" He brushed a tear from her cheek and said simply, "Then I'll save you anyway." A week later, the storm came, literal and not. Thunder rolled across the plains as dark clouds gathered over the ranch. The rain started in heavy sheets, slapping the earth with wild fury. Caleb was out securing the stables, shouting over the wind, when headlights cut through the darkness. The same black car. Elara's heart stopped. The door slammed, and out stepped the man she'd once loved and feared in equal measure. His suit was wet, his smile cold. "I told you I'd come," he said, stepping forward. "You really thought you could play house out here? With a cowboy of all people." Elara backed away, trembling. "Go home, Nathan," she said, voice barely audible. "You don't get to scare me anymore." He laughed, sharp and cruel. "Scare you? I made you. You were nothing before me." Before she could respond, Caleb appeared in the doorway, rain dripping from his hat brim. "You need to leave," he said, voice low but carrying through the storm. Nathan smirked. "And who are you supposed to be? Her new keeper?" Caleb took a step forward, eyes unwavering. "Just someone who knows her worth." "Even if you never did," Nathan's smile faltered for a second, replaced by a sneer. "You think you can protect her from me?" Caleb didn't flinch. "I don't think," he said. "I know." There was a long, tense silence, the kind that could shatter into violence. Nathan lunged, fist raised, but Caleb caught his arm mid-air, twisting it just enough to send a clear message. "You're done hurting her," he said. "Now get off my land." Nathan cursed, staggering back. The storm raged around them, wind howling, lightning cutting the sky. For a moment, he looked ready to strike again. Then something in Caleb's eyes made him stop. Pure steadiness, pure truth, the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout. Nathan spat in the dirt and stormed back to his car, tires skidding as he disappeared into the dark. When silence returned, Elara collapsed into tears. Caleb caught her, holding her against his chest as rain drenched them both. "It's over," he whispered. "He's gone." But she shook her head. "No," she said through sobs. "It's never over. Not really. He's in my head, in the things I still believe about myself." Caleb cupped her face, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Then let's change what's in your head," he said firmly. "You ain't who he said you were. You never were. You're stronger than that. You proved it tonight." The storm passed by morning, leaving the world washed clean. The air smelled of earth and promise. Elara stood outside, hair damp, watching the sunrise. The sky was a palette of orange and pink, and for once she didn't look away. Caleb joined her quietly, coffee in hand. "You sleep any?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "A little," he nodded. "Storms don't last forever." She turned to him, eyes softer than he'd ever seen. "Neither does fear," she said. He smiled, pride flickering in his gaze. "You're learning." She laughed softly, then grew quiet. "Caleb," she said, "why do you care so much? You could have walked away. I would have understood." He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Because you're the kind of person who still says sorry for things that ain't your fault. Because you still look for the good in a world that hurt you. Because you ain't pretty in the way magazines tell you to be. You're beautiful in the way truth is. And truth's what lasts." Tears welled again, but this time they weren't from pain. "You really think that?" she whispered. Caleb smiled, brushing her hair from her face. "Darling, I don't think, I know." In the weeks that followed, Elara changed in quiet, powerful ways. She started teaching art to the local kids at the community center. She laughed louder. She walked into rooms without shrinking. The people of the town, who once whispered about the stranger with the sad eyes, now greeted her with warmth. She'd become part of the place, stitched into its fabric. Caleb watched her with quiet admiration, knowing that love, real love, isn't about rescuing someone. It's about standing beside them while they rescue themselves. One evening, they sat again by the same fence line where she'd once whispered, "I'm not pretty." The sky burned with sunset light, and a cool breeze carried the scent of cedar. Elara leaned her head on his shoulder. "You were right," she said softly. "A pretty fades. Honest lasts," Caleb chuckled. "Told you so," she smiled. "But I think maybe I'm starting to feel pretty too. Not for how I look, for how I live." He tilted his head, looking at her with that same quiet awe. "That's the prettiest kind there is." The camera of life seemed to pull back then. The ranch bathed in gold, the wind carrying laughter across open land. The cowboy and the girl who once hated her reflection sat side by side, no longer defined by scars, but by the peace they'd earned. There would still be storms, of course. Life never promised otherwise. But now she knew she could face them, because she'd learned that beauty isn't in smooth skin or perfect smiles. It's in courage. It's in truth. It's in standing tall even when you once thought you couldn't. As twilight settled, Caleb turned to her. "You ever think about leaving all this behind? Go see the world again?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No," she said softly. "The world's right here. I just couldn't see it before," he smiled. "Then I reckon we'll stay put." She nodded, and together they watched the stars blink awake one by one, the night wrapping around them like an old song. And as the wind whispered through the fields, carrying the echoes of the past far away, Elara finally understood. She was never meant to be fancy. She was meant to be free.